making sure that the mic is off mute this time around. Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to Generator Live. I am your host. I am Matt Stagliano, and if you happen to be watching this on Instagram and you're watching it vertically, the full-size version is over on YouTube, so go ahead over onto YouTube and you can check that out, and you'll just see the wider view instead of just everything crammed in here, so that's why that little link is right down below. So if you are here, please say hi. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Instagram, just go ahead and join the comments. I'm going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. This is super informal today, and you can hear it in my voice. I caught whatever plague goes around Vegas. It's what happens. So after a couple of days of basically no sleep and dehydration and late nights and smoky casinos and screaming over music and talking all day, every day, yeah, it kind of, it defeats the immune system no matter how strong it is. So I'm sitting here not feeling awesome, but not feeling too terrible either. It was a lot worse this morning, believe me. I flew out yesterday morning from Vegas and flew to JFK. So that was whatever, a 5-hour flight. Had a couple hours in JFK, flew up to Portland, Maine. That took about an hour, and then it was an hour and a half to 2 hours home. So by the time I got home, it was about 3 this morning. And my entire plan was to get up and do my normal Friday live show. I even had all my notes ready and everything. And when I woke up this morning, I literally had no voice. I just couldn't say anything. So I was like, all right, well, let's give it a little bit of time today. You know, I know there are a lot of people traveling. There's a lot of people leaving the show as we speak. So if you happen to be seeing this, just understand if you're feeling bad, I'm in the same exact boat. So I'm just checking to see who's here. Oh, Mike Padilla's here, Nanette, Kiati. Hey, man, thanks for joining. I appreciate that. I missed talking to you at the show today. I saw you, but I didn't get a chance to hang out. Did I see you? I'm pretty sure I saw you from afar. Were you there? I hope so. So yeah, let's kind of go through, if you happen to be at WPPI, anybody that's here, if you happen to be at WPPI and you want to join the chat, just go ahead. This is, like I said, total free form. I was just writing my notes in the plane last night, and I wanted to kind of go through before I forgot and before I lose the context. We're just going to crack a little drink. I cannot keep this thing up to speed. All right. So, as you know, I was kind of up and down about whether or not I was going to be going to WPPI at all. And I finally made the decision when they asked me to speak on stage at the Fujifilm Lounge and the podcast stage to do Generator there. Of course, I'm going to jump at that chance. So, got out there, and while I wasn't expecting the same conference that I had the past couple of years, there were a lot of really great things this time around and a lot of things that just weren't so hot. Let me preface this by saying this has nothing to do with production staff. This has nothing to do with even the conference as a whole. I think some of the things that I saw and that I'll talk about are just symptoms of the larger society, the larger photography industry at the moment. Nothing to do with how the show was produced at all. And I just want to be clear with that so that you don't think I'm sitting here and I'm just banging on WPPI. So if you're not familiar and you just happen to be watching this, which I can kind of see some people in the chat, got a lot of photographers here. That's awesome. One of the things that WPPI is, it's a trade show. It's a chance for folks to go on photo walks, paid photo walks. There are business summits and boudoir summits and lighting summits and wedding summits. And then there is also parties and events and networking, shooting bays, a chance to, capture images. If you don't typically get different lighting setups, you can really be testing out all the new gear. It's an awesome show. I really like the fact that they bring so many people together. But here's some things that I saw this year. Now, last year it was held at the Rio, which is kind of at the end of the strip off kind of just far enough away from everything that you feel like you're kind of off the strip, but you're still there. And I showed up on whatever day it was, Monday. I got out there last weekend. And when I showed up at the Rio again this year, I really thought that they would have figured out how to get people checked in. And they didn't. I showed up Sunday afternoon and rolled up to the Rio, and there's this huge line, and I'm talking like an hour-long line to check in. There's a couple of kiosks with iPads that weren't working. You had one agent at the desk who was just flustered and, really overwhelmed. And you just had a lot of people that couldn't get their rooms. You can check in through the app, and some people would get their room and some people wouldn't. You could use the kiosk. Some people would get their room, some people wouldn't. So that entire process from the moment I landed was just like, oh, is this how this is going to be? I didn't have a lot of problems with the Rio last year. This year, however, I got a decent list. So that was the first thing that kind of bugged me. But I was able to get a room, got to see Nikki Klosser. We got to hang out for a drink while she was waiting for her room because everybody was just having problems getting into the rooms that they had reserved. So did that Sunday night, kind of chilled out for a little bit Sunday night, got to see some people, met up with some friends, had some drinks, but nothing wild, right? And then Monday was the live judging when a lot of people were starting to show up. This is when they have all the seminars and a lot of the summits that you pay extra for. I did not attend any of those, so I was really just kind of walking around, getting the lay of the land, trying to understand what I'd be doing, looking at the podcast stage, getting a feel for what it would look like, what it would sound like, all that. And that night when I had gone to bed, the room at the Rio, while it was spacious and it's clean, no problem with it, sleeping in that bed, the climate control was off. So it was either really dry or really humid. And it was either really hot or it was frigid. The bedding consisted of like paper thin sheets, and that was about it. So there was like no warmth in the room. So you could turn the heat up, but then you're boiling, and then you turn it down and you're freezing. It was kind of a mess. Other things with the Rio, the cellular connectivity, the Wi-Fi connectivity is hot garbage, absolutely hot garbage. I was in their modern updated tower and had SOS coverage in my room only for cellular. The Wi-Fi would drop and add you, and I got about 1 bar of Wi-Fi. It was really, really frustrating to try to do anything in the room and have your connectivity constantly dropping. And it really surprised me that a hotel in Las Vegas hasn't conquered the whole internet problem. So I don't know if they need more repeaters, more routers, better traffic routing, whatever it might be. They're screwing it up. And it really not only affected my experience in my room, right? Because I'm trying to upload videos and photos and connect with people, just couldn't get reception anywhere. And it was just garbage. Just as bad on the conference show floor. And you just found these pockets everywhere that you went that, you're like, oh, I'm going to crouch by this water cooler by a door on the left side of Amazon B, and you could get reception there. It was really kind of wacky, and it didn't impress me at all. So other things at the Rio, you had, I understand it's a trade show. I'm going to get all the bad stuff out, and then we're going to go into all the good stuff. So the badge Nazis, right? These are the tend to be septuagenarians that are sitting there waiting for you to show your badge. And man, they were unbelievably aggressive. I understand that they're supposed to check for badges for people to get into the conference. Totally get that. The way in which they did it and the way that they treated the guests was absolutely despicable. I saw more people getting yelled at, just no, ma'am, sir, please, none of that. Show me your badge. Where's your badge? And it really kind of weirded me out. this is a hospitality business, and the people that you hire are a reflection of that business. And I don't feel like they were doing a good job. Now, I get it. They're probably overrun. There's a lot of adversarial interactions with a crowd that size, but relax, right? This isn't a military event. This is people going to watch people learn how to use a camera. So just kind of chill out on that. The music that was there was just loud everywhere. And the way that, now I don't know who picked the music or what. I know that there was like a DJ playing for WPPI. There's music in the hallways, but there literally wasn't a place except for one room, which I think was called the Clubhouse Lounge. I did not go into it, that there wasn't music. So if you're walking or if you're trying to get on your phone or connect with people, just have a conversation in the hallway, found myself always shouting over music. And that just becomes really wearing at times. Then the last thing was basically just kind of lower budgets. You could see that, you go to the Palazzo or you go to the Venetian or Aria or the Cosmo or something like that, that there's different investments there. Didn't really see that at the Rio. So again, not a reflection of the event itself. It's just the location where it was. Now, granted, prices are getting out of control in Vegas. And I'm sure some of these corporations, travel's down, tourism's down, they're trying to spend their money where it needs to be spent. But man, oh man, it just seemed like there were a lot of corners being cut on the Rio side. So it is what it is. All right, let's get into the good stuff. Now, let me check the comments. Yeah, I was always in a hurry. Michael, yeah, we were running around. And that's one of the issues that depends on how you look at it, can be good or bad from the WPPI event standpoint. Meaning, there was so much stuff there this year in terms of speakers and photo walks and summits and, demos stages and parties, and everything overlapped so much. It was difficult to really define your agenda. You found yourself having to pick and choose a ton. And there were speakers that I wanted to see, like I really, really wanted to see, and realized that they were all speaking at the same time. I wanted to see Pratik. I think it was like Pratik, Seth Miranda, and Jerry Guionis were all speaking at the same time. And I wanted to see all three of them. So I wound up in Jerry's class just because the images he was showing, I really wanted to see. I knew how he had done the shoot, and I really wanted to see the final product of it. So went in there. But yeah, it was tough. Even using the app that they create to create your own agenda, it just felt a little bit like there was just too much. With the crowd being smaller than I've seen it in past years. Now, I don't have ticket numbers. It just felt like there were less people there. I would say, it makes it harder for the speakers when you have that many people going all at the same time. You have fewer people at the conference. It was just interesting. Some instructors that I thought would bring a bigger draw only had a handful of people in the room. And then there were some that were fully packed, and it was great to see. I went to Marta Ponsko's seminar, which is the last seminar on Wednesday night, and it was great. It was packed wall to wall. It was fantastic. So it all comes down to, I think, the notoriety of the speaker, the subject material, and so on. But when you put some of these newer speakers in huge rooms, and you don't really get the draw, it's a weird feeling, right? You're being on stage and you're looking out at kind of like empty seats. It's got to be really tough for the speaker. So let's see. Manaz is saying less people, less vendors. Yep. And then I wanted to see Laura Jade. Apparently she couldn't make it, and the app didn't notify us. So that was a bummer. Yeah, there were quite a few of that. I mean, I know Scott Robert Lim had some personal issues. He couldn't make it, but he was still on the agenda. Same thing with Laura Jade. Couldn't make it, still on the agenda. I try not to get too down on those sorts of things because, if someone doesn't show up, yes, there should be slightly better communication. But, I expect that the the WPPI team was focused on a lot of other live in-person details, and the app was probably the last thing that they were thinking about. Again, not making any excuses, but it's just my guess on all of that. So the speakers were all great. The ones that I saw, there's some material that I look at and I say, I don't know how valuable this is. It seems a little bit outdated or seems so beginner level that there's no draw for the intermediate or the experts. And I consider myself like advanced semi-expert because I never feel like I'm ever going to be expert. Jerry Gionis is an expert, right? So I look at this and I say, all right, well, I got a bunch of years under my belt, know a lot of things. Where are the seminars for that level of photographer, for people that have been in this business 20 years and that are looking for different things to learn? I think it becomes a little difficult. I mean, obviously the trade show and the classes are aimed at bringing in new photographers and getting people trained up. And I think it's awesome. I think it's amazing. And there's nothing wrong with a lot of educational choices, but it just felt like there's a certain level at which it stops. I also noticed that there were several speakers on the agenda that some that I went to see that were newer speakers, and there's nothing wrong with being a newer speaker, but it just felt like they were chosen for social media following rather than experience and experience teaching and speaking on stage. Again, I'm not throwing shade at anybody, and I'm not going to mention any names, but these are just the things that I saw. So, I know that there's a balance between the marketing and drawing crowds, and the larger that an audience that someone has, maybe the better their social currency will be when applying for these sorts of speaking gigs. But at the same time, I don't know, there were some people in there that were just straight up reading from slides, and that doesn't feel like they put in any work to any of that. So, contrast that with people like Marta Ponsko, who things were going wrong left and right on her, and she was just still nailing it. Just never missed a step, was funny, was engaging, was keeping the crowd laughing and into it. I mean, things just kept going wrong for her, and she was such a pro. She had a stand break. The batteries died in her mic. The stage was too small. I mean, there was just one thing after another, and she just kept crushing it. So, you've got that level of experience. And then, you've got people that go in there and are just reading from slides. You could have sent me the PDF instead of me wasting an hour and a half in your class. That's just the way that I look at it. Again, there were so many options. You could have chosen anything that you wanted to see. I just feel like with so many options, there was so much overlap, you don't get as much out of the show. Personal opinion. Now, on the trade show side, the trade show was broken up into two major rooms. You had the main floor, which had the majority of the vendors. You had your Sonys and Nivoto and B&H and Autorama and all the big vendors. Then the other room that was like the Fujifilm Lounge, and that's where the podcast stage was. That's where the Icon Awards display was of all the finalists, so you could see that. Fuji had a little lounge where they were giving classes, and there were a couple of other vendors in there as well, but it was a much smaller room. It was really focused. So it was predominantly about a couple of shooting bays for Fuji and then the podcast stage and the Icon Awards. So that was the other room. And that's where I spent most of my time. The reason being, not only did I want to get a feel for what I'd be doing up on stage and getting to know the sound and some of the things I'd have to conquer, but also it was more interesting to me to be watching podcast after podcast from Nikki and Elena Blair and Chloe Ramirez and the vendor table and like all these folks that were up there doing amazing podcasts. I wanted to watch them live in person. That's really entertaining for me. So that was that other room. All right. Everything else were huge rooms for speakers, classes, the summits, so on and so forth. Now, one of the big draws for this entire thing was to two things really: the Icon Awards, right, the print competition, so that people could see that, and Annie Leibovitz. Annie Leibovitz is going to be the keynote speaker on Tuesday, so that's the huge draw for everybody. And they didn't have anything else going on during Annie's talk. So everybody that was at the conference was basically in one room together. It kind of smelled funky after a while, I'll tell you that much. So on Monday, there was the live judging, and I got to see some of that. I love watching it. The judges are all incredible. It's run by Jerry and Melissa Guionis, and it was just a wonderful way to learn about how to compete in photography and what you might need to do to your own images if you want to compete at the highest levels. So I like watching that. I like getting inspired. I like looking at things that I don't know how the minds of some of these artists work, because they see the world differently, and it's beautiful and it's humbling and it's impressive. And a lot of my friends do it. I stopped competing years ago, but I still love watching it. So that was Tuesday morning. Tuesday afternoon, that was Monday morning. And then Monday evening, we had the big welcome party. So this is put on by Fuji, right? Fujifilm is such an incredible sponsor of WPPI. And I mean, I shoot Fujifilm anyway, but their party is in this big open area of the Rio called like Masquerade Village, I think it's called. It's just a huge open area. There's a big stage for a band, and there's balconies and all this sort of stuff. And it was Carnival theme, and it was so damn loud. Like, it was impossible to hear. Now, this space is cavernous, so sound is going to echo and it's going to bounce. And there's a lot. I mean, there are well over 1,000 people there, but it was so loud you just couldn't hear yourself think, and it was so crowded you couldn't move around. So for someone that gets a little bit claustrophobic in crowds and doesn't want to scream, I actually took off relatively early. I was also pretty exhausted from traveling, but the party was great. Don't get me wrong. Like, everybody was there. A lot of people dressed up. The music was fantastic. I just was completely overstimulated. And, I wanted to maintain my voice. I could feel my voice going on the first night, and I wanted to maintain some level of voice so I could do the podcast, and then, game on. But that first night, the party was really cool, and then I just hit the bed. So on Tuesday morning, they had this thing where you could get in line. The doors for Annie Leibovitz's talk was first thing in the morning. So she was selling some books. She was selling signed copies, like pre-signed copies, and then she was selling blank copies that you could then get her to sign in person. There were some rules around, and I'm sure they're imposed by Annie and no one else. There were some rules around, like, all right, you had to pre-write what you wanted her to write, and then there were no photos and no videos or selfies or anything like that. So it was like a step and repeat. She'd write the thing on the paper and go. So I decided I just wanted to get a pre-signed copy, right? I love having art books in my home, and I really, really admire Annie Leibovitz's work. So I bought one of those. But that line was a couple hundred people long when I showed up at 7:30, and they weren't going to start selling them until 8 o'clock. So I got in line. I was like, hey, I'll get down there early, and I'll get in line. I'll just bang this thing out. Nope. I got one of the last 5 pre-signed books that were there, because there were only 100. So I got one of the last 5, and I was really happy for that. But I looked behind me at that point, and there were another 300 people in that line easily. But that was nothing compared to the line to get into the room, which was just thousands of people, just all the way down the hallway and then out of the area. It was so many people all at once. So we go in there. Annie comes out. Annie speaks, goes through her books, goes through every picture in both books, which is called Woman. And the thing that is great, you have to separate out the fact that you're at a conference and a trade show where everybody tends to be a slightly polished speaker, and they're up in front of people, and they're used to, giving educational speeches or storytelling speeches. That's not Annie. Annie's a photographer, right? So I'm sure she has a trillion stories, but she's not a speaker. And it was, after a while, a little bit deflating. I'm not saying the content was bad, but every word, she'd kind of be contemplative and she'd say, a lot. And I just feel like the crowd came in with so much energy and they hit this wall of Annie, who is just much more reserved and, is probably trying to pull from all these stories to make them as concise as possible in the time that she was given. And she would, kind of wander off topic now and then, but it is what it is. I mean, it doesn't take away from the work or the experience or anything like that. I was able to actually get in, and I think I was in the third row. So it was really nice to be close. I was, 35 feet from where she was standing, and that was really cool. And so after, I think it was an hour and a half, they did her speech, and then there was a little sit-down interview with Sally Sargood, who's one of the VPs at Emerald, who runs WPPI, and they did a little Q&A, and not very long, and then they got into the book signing. So it was good. Everybody came out of there pretty charged up. Some of the work that she has in these books are just phenomenal, of some of the most powerful women in the world, and some of the most interesting women in the world that you've probably never heard of. And it was really cool to see how she captures people and dig into her process a little bit and the whys and the hows. So that was cool. And then that afternoon I had to do the podcast. So here's the interesting thing. I do this a lot. I have no problem talking clearly, but I started to get really nervous, like butterflies and legs involuntarily shaking and all this stuff. So pardon me. So one of the things I was doing was just trying to keep my mind occupied, because when I start to overthink, I start to really overthink. And I knew that there would be no video on stage, but I still wanted to capture it. So I had a Pocket Osmo 3, and I had my phone. I had two different like little expandable, they're light stands, but I use them as tripods for the two devices. And then I hooked up some DJI mics on the onstage mics, because I didn't know if it would be recorded or not. It wound up being recorded. So I set up the cameras to get what I could get. It's certainly not cinematic, but it's something, and that'll be coming out. I hope to put that out on Monday. I'll put that episode out. And I'm also backed up a couple of episodes, so I'll get out some of my other conversations as well. But be looking for that on Monday. That'll be the one that I do with Josh Beaton. So we start right on time, and I'm nervous, and I felt it. And I could feel myself stumbling over words. I could feel my heart going like this. And Josh was wonderful. He was sitting across from me. And the conversation went great. And all praise and thanks and gratitude to Josh Beaton, because he really did carry the interview. I mean, one of the things that I'm working on as an interviewer is shutting my mouth when someone else is speaking, not trying to speak over them, just actively listening, and then trying to make the most interesting conversation that I could have. So it worked well. Everybody seemed to enjoy it. There were probably about somewhere around 30 people in the immediate crowd right in front, but looking out from the stage, there were quite a few people in the Fuji room. Like I said, there were a couple hundred people in there that I could see standing in the back. There was like some shooting bays by there. So it was nice to be able to be exposed to an audience that they really don't know who I am. And that's perfectly okay. That's why you do stuff like this. But I did find that no matter the podcast, people were showing up and sitting down and being interested. They were actively listening. And that just told me something about this medium and how it can be something different at a conference like this, to be watching some of these conversations happen live that are happening, but you never really get access to. And some of the guests that were coming up on some of these other podcasts were fantastic. So I think it's a unique opportunity to really dig in to some of these instructors without it being like a seminar, without it being a paid photo walk. You get access to information that you probably wouldn't get elsewhere. So I really like the fact that there was a big podcast stage there. It was lit well. The sound team was fantastic. So nothing bad to say about any of that. Tuesday night was the Icon Awards, and I got to hang out with Josh and Erica Manning and Whitney Minton and just a whole bunch of people. We had a couple of tables in the back. Again, I did not participate this year in the Icon Awards, but I love going and watching. So we watched that. It was awesome. There was a glam bot there, which was super cool. And then met up with a couple of friends. I met up with Susan Stripling and her partner, Bill, and we had a couple of drinks, and then we went to the Voodoo Lounge, which is up on the 51st floor of the Rio. That was pretty cool. It just looks out over all of Vegas, and it's beautiful up there. So that was fun. Wednesday, I went to see Jerry Gionis in the morning, like I was talking about, and then I watched more podcasts, and then I started to get into a funk. Now, I'll tell you about that in a second, but I'll just kind of finish up the night. Then I got myself a ticket to the Empire Strips Back, which is a burlesque show based on Star Wars right there at the Rio. And I bought myself a front row ticket to that, and it was a blast. It was one of the most fun things I did all week. And it was just campy, and it was sexy, and it was fun. It was about 2 hours long, and the tickets weren't that expensive, and they just kept you laughing and kept you entertained the whole time. Love it. Absolutely love it. The crowd was fantastic. The energy was great. So it was a good way to go there. And then that led out, and downstairs was the close party on Wednesday night. Less loud this time around, just as big of a crowd. And by this point, I had a little bit of a buzz going, so there was a lot of dancing involved, and I think there was filming of said dancing, and then wound up staying up really late. I think we got home at about 4 a.m., something around those. But we were just sitting at the bar in the lobby, talking, having a great time, and just spending time with people that I really enjoy being around. So that was the trip. And then I was out on Thursday morning. So again, some of the highlights for me were the Fuji room and the people that were there. Now, I wrote down some notes that I'm looking at here about some of the things that I had heard, right? So when the brain starts going and I'm noticing all of the trends and patterns that I'm seeing, right? I listen to information. I listen to conversations that people are having, and I try to find, what's that theme? What's that topic that's on everybody's mind? And I fully expected it to be AI, and it wasn't. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about AI, don't get me wrong, but it was not what I thought it was going to be, as pervasive as that. Some of the seminars that were on AI, I kind of jumped in and out of. Was not a fan of what was being taught, but that's not for me to say. I choose different paths. But the thing that I heard everybody talking about is what you've heard me talking about here incessantly over the past couple of months, which is there is a vacuum for community in this industry. That's not to say there is not a community. There are plenty of them. There's all sorts of niches. But there's a feeling that the communities are all driven by an individual, and the purpose is that individual. They've got a mastermind, or they're selling something, or they've got a podcast, or whatever it is. There's kind of like one person that community rallies around. And that's not a bad thing. That's how people do business. It's how we network, right? What I didn't see a lot of were people saying, oh yeah, you need to be part of this community over here because it's very supportive and welcoming, and it's growing, and it welcomes everybody. Like, there are communities out there like that. But even so, they're still at that medium size level, meaning it's not hyper niched. It's kind of like, the Peculiar Collective comes to mind, right? Big group of people, a couple hundred people, very supportive, very active. But I think about community in the larger sense of thousands of people, right? Really helping. Now, I may be off about that, but when we think about community, what I heard was that there was a lack of a place that had true support without sales, without hero worship, right? Just a place where people could come and create together. Now, perhaps the problem is that as we're all photographers, there's competition and there's fear that your good idea might get stolen or that someone else is going to be able to move quicker on it than you are. But the thing you have to remember is no one can be you. No one can do the things that you do in your way. So I've gate kept in the past because of my ego, and I'm really trying to let go of that. I'd rather just share this information because you can't be me and I can't be you. So why don't we just teach each other how to do this and get better as a community, right? That's how I see things, not necessarily as I want to build a community around Matt Stagliano. That's not what I'm saying. As much as I'd love that, and you can put up a bronze statue of me anytime you want. But what I'd really rather have is a group of people that say, all right, I want to learn photography or live streaming or podcasting or whatever, and this is the place to go, right? Think of it like almost like going to a brewery, right? All your locals are going to be there, and there's going to be different people there from different communities every night, but the vibe of the place is really good and welcoming. And I feel like most of the communities now are these like private members only clubs. And I just want a really cool spot where anybody can come and hang out. They can lurk, they can participate, whatever it is, but I just want it to be supportive. So community was the big thing on people's minds. And what I didn't hear was a lot of solutions in that vein. I didn't hear a lot of people coming up with ideas. They said there's a lack of community, but there's no one set leader out there that is changing things. And that's okay too. We're going to figure this out. But it just showed me that there is this gap in the industry. There was some focus on video and more mobile video and how to, move faster on social. There was obviously the podcast stage. So there was some new media stuff there, but it still felt kind of like an afterthought. And perhaps maybe I'm too advanced, and that sounds like a shitty thing for me to say, but that's not what I mean. Like there's ego there, but I know how to do a lot of things on my phone and whatnot. And I just feel like the video stuff that they were presenting was really, really low level. And I'd like to see some better education rather than showing a bunch of stuff that I've done and then be like, just go on CapCut and use AI and this. I'd love to see more education on the why, right? Not necessarily the how, but the why. And getting to people to think about what they're creating a little bit more. Get them to think about, sure, all right, I want to tell this story. What's the best way to go about that? How do I learn video that way? Because making video, short form, long form, regardless of what it is easy. We're pressing buttons. We're making sure light's good and sound's good. But telling a story is different. Having a narrative arc is different. Being cinematic is not just lighting and mood and vibe. There is story that has to go along with that. So what I did see about video was just a little bit too primary. I would have liked to have seen some deeper material on that. But again, I wasn't asked to speak about any of this stuff, and that's perfectly fine. I got to the great good fortune of being on stage, and I'm very, very grateful that happened. And anything that I can do to raise up the podcast or the content creation scene, I will absolutely do. But I think the photography industry is at a crux right now of figuring out how do we best address the larger populace in a way that makes good financial sense, in a way that is stimulating, in a way that captures a younger audience. And I feel like we're kind of stuck in this Gen X millennial phase right now. And some of the techniques that we learn are outdated. And being in the business that I'm in trying to learn and master the understanding of how content is being created these days, I see a lot that the photography industry could draw from, meaning outside of the photography industry, more in the entrepreneurial space and the people that are teaching email marketing. in a way that is not just, you should have a blog or you should know what SEO means. It's not what I'm saying. I'm talking the real deep shit, the stuff that actually produces results and the understanding that comes along with it. I just don't see a lot of that. Again, WPPI has to cater to the broadest possible base, and I got no shade on that. I understand. But with it being all of those things, there were much fewer vendors there this year than there have been in years past. I would attribute that to several things, right? Political climate in the country, meaning there were a lot of my friends from Canada that just would not make the trip down. I can understand why, but that was one contingent. It's getting phenomenally expensive in Vegas to do anything for floor space. The unions are out of control. The costs per square foot on a floor for a booth are out of control. And the ROI doesn't tend to be there for some of these companies. So if I'm a smaller company and I'm trying to get my marketing out, is spending $10,000 on a booth space on the main trade show floor going to do it for me? Am I going to get that $10,000 back? Am I going to 2x that, 10x that by being at the show? And if not, I think a lot of people had to ask themselves the question, is it going to make sense for my company to spend all this money to go? And the floor space is just the first thing. That's the first thing. And then you got food and you got lodging and you got flights and you got gear and shipping and freight and all the things. So I respect the hell out of any company that made their way out there because it's a huge expense. But I think that also kept away a lot of vendors. There were folks out there that I was really hoping to see. Who was there were a lot of album companies, a lot of peripherals. You had the Adoramas and the BHs where you can go through all the gear, but it just felt like there were far fewer vendors. Again, I don't have any of the inside track information. I can't tell you if there were more or less, but it just felt like the show was smaller. I felt like I was able to walk around it pretty quickly and be like, okay, well, I guess that's it. So then again, right, I'm doing the pros and cons, balance, real stuff here. I didn't need anything. I don't need any gear. I don't need any lights. I didn't need to shoot in any of the shooting bays. I've got my portfolio, which is fine. I just didn't find myself needing anything in the trade show. And again, I also get a little bit freaked out in crowds. It's just part of who I am. I get overstimulated. I can't stand when people stop in the middle of the aisle and just start staring around and block the traffic, or when someone's teaching at a booth, the crowd around it, while good for the speaker, is just, it makes it difficult to get by and go see the things you want to see. Again, all first world problems, right? I understand what I'm complaining about here, but it was just a different trade show experience this year. For example, another budget issue, wasn't much swag, like not a whole lot of buttons or pens or hats or t-shirts or anything like that. So I think everybody's budgets are down. And while I have nothing bad to say about the show itself, WPPI, I think it was just a canary in a coal mine about the next couple of years, which is the huge gap that I've been driving towards for the past 6 months, which is conferences are going away. Whether people want to believe it or not, it's not going to happen next year, but maybe the year after that, we will see a continued decline in the big trade shows because it's becoming cost prohibitive. They're not providing the ROI that I think a lot of people are expecting from them. And so I think that there's going to be a rush to figure out what's next. And we've talked about this, right? We've talked about virtual summits, and we've talked about in-person events and smaller retreats and things like that. Everybody's scrambling to figure out what works. And there's a lot of folks that are letting people do that first and then seeing if it works or not and then doing the same exact thing. I don't think that's the way. I think we need to continue to innovate. We need to think about different ways to deliver content and build community and get people together and give them the experience and the education that they're looking for, but in a way that doesn't mean that they have to shell out $5,000 for a couple of days and only see a couple of classes. Man, I have a hard time. Now, I say $5,000. for people that are traveling and then staying at the hotel and then going out for anything. I mean, my typical breakfast was a Metrics bar and a Red Bull. I know my body's a temple. You can tell by the food I eat. So Red Bull and a Metrics bar. And that was, I think, $16 every morning. And that's because I'm too cheap to go get myself a $30 omelet. It's just 2 eggs. I need 2 eggs. 2 eggs are not $30. So, you know, I have a hard time being in Vegas and the cost of some of these conferences when, you know, you can probably take a class from the instructor that you want and get a full day workshop for far less than that. But, you know, I see the value in it. I see the value in the trade show. I see the value in having a breadth of educators. So that's that. A couple of other things. Let me see. We talked about Annie. We talked about the Rio. We talked about the overlapping classes, and there was another common thread of a little bit of fear and uncertainty about what's going on. You had some people that are like, you know, my business is doing really, really well. The photography industry is thriving. People are out there. And then there were people that were like, things have never been this bad for me. I just closed my studio. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. Sales are down. I need second jobs. It ran the spectrum. But what I noticed was that there was common apprehension amongst a lot of people that they don't know what's coming. And that's where it started to get into AI, right? There was some panic and some frustration with what AI is doing. But there's also the good side, which is people are recognizing that what we do as photographers matters in the fight against AI. I embrace AI, and I've said this before, for ideation, for copywriting. I do not use AI for imaging. I do not use it on to generate images. I don't use generative AI at all. I might use Evoto, if you want to consider that AI, Evoto for some retouching, no problem with that, but I can also do it by hand. But with generative AI, it's just an area I stay out of. It doesn't feel right to me, but that doesn't mean I have to have some sweeping general approach to AI. I approach it with my ethics and morals in mind, and I think most people should do that. So whatever makes you happy, you do. But people are worried about where it's going insofar as how it's going to affect their business. And I think it's the wrong thing to look at to think you're competing with AI, because if all you have are your images, then yeah, you're competing against AI and you're going to lose. But if you have experiences, or you have an approach to photography that people haven't seen before, or you are providing products that AI can't create, right? Beautiful legacy wall art or handmade books, whatever it might be. That is what is going to separate you as a photographer. It just has to be a much more encompassing experience that you're providing to people. So there are some people that were afraid of it. There are some people that are embracing it, some people at every shade in between. And everybody seemed to have the same idea, which was, I don't know where this is going, but I should probably be making a decision about how I either want to adapt or stay away or embrace it wholly and completely. But we cannot compete with the sheer volume of images that are being produced if our intention is to compete on images alone. We have to have a different type of voice in addition to the photography voice that we have. We have to be able to provide the viewer, the client, whoever it is that we're dealing with, provide them with the information that allows them to see we are different than AI. We're just not going to produce the same things. So I'm still bullish on the photography industry. I just think it's going to come as a big wake-up call for a lot of people. If they don't start adapting, they're going to go out of business. One of the places that I see this is in the video content creation space. And I think it really settled home that there's this generational difference, right? Obviously, we know this. Old curmudgeons like me have a hard time with all the platforms and all the things. Younger people that are, basically their DNA is in these devices. They know how to intrinsically post faster, better, what works, what doesn't, right? I tend to overthink things like a lot of people. So I think there are going to be generational differences in all of this, but we need to start, in my opinion, we need to start looking at how we create content, how we do podcasts, how we do video, both short-term and long-term, how we do those things, because that is going to set the stage for whatever comes next. I'm a big believer that if you're not starting a YouTube channel now, that is really going to be your last nail in the coffin. If you're not doing something to provide valuable video as part of your photography business, and I'm not saying selling video, using video as a tool. If you're not doing that, you are going to wonder why you're struggling with search, wondering why your SEO is down. You've got to be understanding the landscape of what is truly happening. So I've seen so much change in this industry in just the past 6 months in terms of what people are putting out, who's doing well, who's not, what is happening on YouTube in our industry and outside of our industry. And the things that I'm finding is people are gravitating more and more towards YouTube. It is what it is. I think the algorithms, I don't even want to talk about the algorithms. That's not even a thing. The way that we're consuming content is different, right? And I'm not going to tell you anything that you probably don't know, but I kind of stopped using Google for search. Now I have an output-based type of search strategy. I need to solve a particular problem. How do I get this to do what I want it to do? How do I find out more about fountain pens? I'm not going to Google for that. I go on YouTube because then I know there's going to be someone with a video somewhere that I can click through and get more information and get a better feel for the product or for the idea or the concept, whatever it is. And that's the thing that I don't think people are paying enough attention to. I'm finding that I'm watching more and more video on YouTube at night on my television instead of Netflix or Prime or Hulu or Paramount or any of the subscription services. YouTube Premium is pretty much all I need these days. And when it comes to podcasting, everybody that I talk to, I would tell them about the video side of this, but they'd say, are you on Apple or Spotify? Because I listen to a lot of podcasts. And that got me thinking, people aren't using audio as a big enough distribution channel for their own thoughts, their own education, what it is that they're doing in their business so that their clients are aware of what it is that they offer and how they separate themselves from AI. So I will sing this from every mountaintop that I can. You've got to be able to get over your fear of being in front of the camera or the microphone if you expect to survive the next 5 years. At all. Hell, maybe the next year. There is no better time, especially if you've been talking like me for years. I got to start this. I have to do more of this. I have to put myself in front of the camera. Do it live and be done with it. Stop thinking about polish. Stop thinking about, all the hooks. Just be you. The reason being, I say right now, as you're starting things, if you're just you, no one's watching. And that's brilliant because it allows you to do all the reps that you need to do to get better at this without all the shame and embarrassment. I am going to press mute and cough up probably a kidney. It was a liver. So we've got to be able to put that fear and shame aside and just start making the content that we want to make. Put it out there. You will get better at this. You do not need all the junk I have hanging from my ceilings or the monitors or the teleprompters or the multiple cameras. You don't need any of that. You need a phone and you need kind of a framework of what it is that you want to do. It is not saying, all right, guys, I just thought I'd go live to talk to you a little bit about your audience is gone. Stop it. You've got to be able to learn how to make content fast, repeatable, easy for you, low lift, and impactful. But the important thing is just getting in front of the camera. Get used to it. Here's the thing. If you don't go live and you're recording it and it doesn't go well, you can delete it. If you go live, you learn really, really quickly about what works and what doesn't. And if you go live and it's on something like YouTube and you don't like it, you take it down, right? We have total control over all this stuff. So I don't know why there's so much fear. I really don't. I used to be fearful myself, but I think it was because it was a mystery of a process. And my expectations were such that when I started making content, that I would be at the same level as these top creators. And that's just not how it works. It's just not how it works. You've got to put in the reps. You can't expect your body to change if you don't go to the gym. You can't expect anything to get better without the effort and the failure. And this is one of the things that Josh and I talked about on the podcast was the concept of failure and how we have to fail more and more and more and fail harder so that you can learn from that and really understand what it is that you want to do and the stuff that you want to put out into the world. So I don't think enough people understand the power of that in what we do. Yes, a lot of people have. This isn't me sitting here going, I'm the only person with a YouTube channel. What I'm saying is that if you're sitting on the fence about it, or if you only create once every, 2 months, okay, fit it in where you can fit it in, but the consistency and the showing up over and over and over just helps build those muscles faster. So if you're looking to get into any level of content creation, whether it's audio, whether it's course creation, whether it's just fun videos, right? Promoting your business, whether it's educational content for your clients to let them know what to expect, how your pricing works, whatever it is. If you don't start doing some of that now and building that library of content and getting the practice and figuring out what works and what doesn't, what's the good look and what doesn't. If you go back to the beginning episodes of Generator, ones with like Nina Covington and Erica Manning a couple of years ago, the room that I'm in now was turned 180 degrees. I was on basically a potato camera from my iMac. And it just looked terrible. And then I changed the angle of it. And then I changed the lighting. And then I switched around again. You have to go through and see what works and what doesn't for you. You're not going to get it right the first time around. So why not just start doing it? A lot of people say, I don't know the equipment. I don't know. You got a phone because I see you there every night and you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. You got a phone. You could have made a whole bunch of video in that same time. How many people are in the front seat of their car holding their phone like this with 100,000 followers? So just stop. Just stop thinking that way. I can understand if video is not your thing, but don't hide behind fear. If it's not a rational part of your strategy, I get it. Don't hide behind fear. I'm watching too many people in too many other industries that I'm working closely with on this content creation stuff from all walks of life, all ages, all industries. And we're working together, and I'm realizing that the ones that are succeeding are the ones that are failing the most and getting back up and doing it again and again and again. And there's nothing wrong with that failure. In fact, I see it as that grit and that determination. If somebody watches my stuff and they're like, oh, this guy's a douche and like he's got nothing to say, okay, I'm going to come back the next week anyway, or the next day anyway, and I'm going to keep producing video because what I see in my future is success in this field. I don't base it on the output of one video. I've had videos that have tens of thousands of views, and I've got videos that don't have 10 views. And I'm still in there. Kat just said it, and it's not, for some reason my comments aren't working. I can't really show them on screen, but Kat, thanks for being here. I hope you're feeling better. I got whatever you have. Failure is the price of success. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. And if you're not ready to fail, that's okay. But look at yourself and ask why, right? I'm not saying you've got to give up everything right now and dive into video. But if you've even thought about or contemplated it, start practicing. Use your phone, right? One of the great exercise that I learned from the folks over at Ultra Speaking, which is something that I've been really working on. I've been working on my filler words. I've been working on more concise thoughts. That part's not going so well. And I've also been working on my own self-talk. So follow the folks at Ultra Speaking. And I was on a webinar with them a couple of weeks ago. And one of the exercises they had was, all right, we're going to pick a topic, any topic that you can speak about. And let's say it's purple microphone covers, right? These are, I'll give the plug, Doc Rock sell these. They're called Doc Pops, and they go on a bunch of different microphones. You can get them, and it's just kind of like color coordination. But let's say we're talking about microphone covers. Talk about it for 60 seconds, make a video, a 60-second video. Get everything out, just talk it out. Don't question it, just talk about it for 60 seconds. Then go back and do the same thing, but do it in 30 seconds. Set up a timer, do it in 30 seconds. When you're done with that, do it again and do it in 15 seconds. Compress as much of that information down, strip out all the junk, and compress it down to 15 seconds. Now, once you're at the 15-second level, that's a great spot to be because now you know exactly the essence of what it is that you're speaking about. Now you can take that 15 seconds and expand it back out to 60 seconds and have a more informative, more in-depth short that's still only a minute long, but it cuts out all that extra junk. Cuts out all the filler, and it gets to your point much faster. I tried the exercise. I did it on a couple of mine, and damn if it didn't work. I can't laugh. I'm going to start coughing. So these are the types of things that we have to start practicing as photographers. I had a lot of conversations this week with a lot of people. And one of the things that I tune into a lot, especially when people come to me and they ask my opinion on things, which isn't a lot, but I get a handful of people asking me about certain situations just because they might be newer and I just have a little bit more experience. That's all it is. When I'm listening to them, there's two things that happen. One, my attention span is relatively short, right? The Adderall wears off and now I'm thinking just squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. So if you don't get to your point very quickly, it's hard for me to help you. So think about the question, and it doesn't have to be like you're asking someone for help, but think about what it is that you're trying to talk about. And before you just start talking, have a point. Have a point, have a question, an end point that you want to get to. And then how do you do that in 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 15, and then back to 60? I found that I was in these conversations and it would take 3 or 4 minutes for someone to get to a point, and the question that they wind up asking had nothing to do with the last 4 minutes that they were talking about. They're just giving unnecessary detail. And it's kind of a metaphor for a lot of what I see is we are giving people far too much detail for them to make a decision. We're giving them far too much detail. We're confusing them, and you're losing interest, right? We all know it takes the first, 3 seconds of a video. That's what the platforms are looking at for user retention. 3 seconds, man. And if you're going on for 3 minutes about something, no one's going to listen. Just not going to listen. So get better at making your point faster. Second thing is I noticed a lot of fear. And this is something that I notice in some newer photographers or any creator that's going into a slightly new field, and they feel the fear, the resistance coming up. And they do everything to talk themselves out of doing the thing. Yeah, but, and I say this from total experience. I was a yeah, but guy for a lot of years, and it kept me from succeeding the way that I want to succeed. But I noticed that perhaps maybe I'm more in tune to it, but when I talk to someone, it tends to be there are all these walls of resistance that it's easy once you start looking for it to identify. And I had to tell more than one person this week, what's the worst thing that could happen? You're not going to be in any worse situation that you're in now, but what's the best thing that could possibly happen, right? So I just saw a lot of that mindset and that approach to things, letting that fear overwhelm them. And fear can be overwhelming because it's scary, right? It's bringing up all these feelings in you that you're just kind of like, oh God, you're projecting down the line of all this disastrous stuff that could happen because you put a video out. And I'm telling you, come back to the beginning. Come here closer. No one's watching. No one's watching, no one's listening. So just do your thing. And if they are watching and they are listening and they keep coming back, but they don't subscribe or they don't send you a message, who cares? You're putting your information out there. You're getting better at your craft. You're talking better. You're making your points more concise. And you're just becoming a better communicator. That's it. So the fear, while we all have it in different capacities and different places, it can be real and paralyzing, and I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying look at it from a slightly different direction insofar as if you feel that fear, just ask yourself the two questions. What's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? And typically, when you start thinking about what's the best thing that can happen, it energizes you. When you start thinking about what's the worst thing that can happen, you're going to wind up in the same place tomorrow that you're in today, which was, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this. You can, because sitting proof, I'm not even going to say walking proof, sitting proof that you just keep showing up and it gets easier. Someone said to me after the podcast, now, granted, in the podcast, I didn't do a ton of speaking because I was trying not to. I'm really working on not speaking over my guests. I'm really trying to give time and space in the conversation. And I am, again, so amazingly grateful that Josh was my guest because his ability to speak and connect points and do it in a way that is comical and, just very down to earth, very honest. I wanted the crowd to hear from him. I don't want the focus on me in those instances. I want it on my guest. And I aim for like a 20-80% mix, right? I want my guest talking 80% of the time. I'll talk 20, 30, 70, maybe something like that. But I don't want it to be even. It's not the type of podcast that I want to do. Interviews are better when the host speaks less and lets the guest provide the information. So having Josh was just a godsend because he's an incredible human being and he can talk without provocation. It's wonderful. So I was up there and I was trying not to speak as much, and I feel like it went really, really well. Now the question is, how do I build that muscle even more? Having more conversations, saying less, preparing a little bit more, but also actively listening enough that I can pull on these threads and make the conversations better. Even though I do this a lot, I'm still working on all these little intricacies to make the content better. Now, that's just me in the format that I use, right? Not everybody's going to do an interview. But I did watch a lot of people interviewing others, and it just made it curious for me, the different styles that are out there. Some I watched, I'm like, wow, they are really easy in the way that they talk, and it's great. But I also found myself bouncing from one speaker to another and not really engaging with a particular speaker because there was so much happening in a conversation. So I don't know, man. Like, I look at it and I say, I want to help as many people as I can get better at the content creation thing. It doesn't have to be podcasting. It can be short form video. It can be long form video. It can be anything. You don't have to be Martin Scorsese and you don't have to sound like James Earl Jones. What you have to do is have a willingness to be able to put yourself out there and not think about the consequences, the negative consequences. the only bad thing that's going to happen is that you're going to say, I'm really good at this. I want to do more. Where am I going to put it in? Where am I going to fit the time in? Right? Because you're going to get addicted to doing this. I don't do this for the vanity numbers. I do it because I want to be a better communicator. I want to be able to, when that opportunity arises, to be able to talk to people. If I'm asked to go somewhere and give a speech, I don't want it to be full of ums and ahs and ideas that just wander all over the place. So I'm working actively on trying to be a better communicator. And I think once you start to build those reps, you become much more relaxed with your material because you're not worried about the material. You're just now in the flow, right? So WPPI was great. It was also eye-opening. But here's the last thing that I'll talk about. I fell into a phenomenal depression in the 3 days that I was there. And I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you how I got out of it. So I was very apprehensive. Stick around. This is going to be a doozy. So I'll take a drink. So I was really apprehensive going out there for a lot of reasons, right? Overextending myself financially a little bit. Not really sure what I was going to get out of this. But I was excited. The draw for me is always friends, right? Not necessarily the education of the trade show. Friends, face-to-face networking. That's the most important thing you can do. But I found myself, as I was there at the show, while I was seeing my friends, while it was nice to have people come up and talk to me that I didn't know and that had seen the content or listened to the podcast, one of the things that started happening was, I don't even know if it was imposter syndrome, but I was sitting in the judging rooms and I'm watching all these amazing images from a lot of people that I have no idea who they are, right? Because they don't say the name. I'm just seeing these images. And I realized, okay, I don't think that way. I'm not an artist like that. Bear with me. There's a lot of negative self-talk here that I had to work through. So I'm not an artist like them. So I started to feel a little less than. And then I saw a lot of people that were a lot younger and less experienced than me getting opportunities on stage. And that made me start to think about myself and the things that I wanted. And yes, I was on stage at the same exact show for nearly the same amount of time as a lot of people. I understand that I can't look at that as a negative thing. But I started to think, I'm like, what have I not done over the past many years to not be put in that position, to not have those opportunities? And it's an unresolved question, and I really don't want to think about it too much because it goes down a bad path, but it just got me thinking. Because one of the best things that I feel, one of the truly best things about going to these shows is seeing my friends level up. Seeing people like Erica and Josh winning awards, competing, getting in there, having this circle of really tight, competitive, like competition-oriented friends in that community. I saw people that have been doing education for years. They've got a tight little community. And I felt, as I started watching and looking, while I don't have the desire to do what a lot of these people are doing, I started looking at what it is that I do want, and I realized I don't know if I fit in the photography community the way that I thought I would. And it really threw me for a loop. I wasn't there with a group of people that I'd hang out with every day. I was there by myself. And in that, I tend to become very insular. I walk, I kind of stare past people. I don't look a lot of people in the eye, and I just kind of go and do my thing. I didn't network like I thought because I felt this inadequacy being at this show. I felt like I didn't belong. I wasn't engaging enough. I wasn't funny enough. I wasn't pretty enough. you know what I mean? I was thinking about all this stuff going on in my head, and I didn't know why it was coming up. Hindsight, thinking about it today, it was really about being dehydrated, not feeding my body, treating it like shit, right? Staying out too late, being exhausted, all that. That really gets my mind kind of spiraling. But the other thing that I thought, and this one almost made me break down, was that if I don't go to these shows, which I'm really not planning on doing next year at this point, because I want to be able to create a different type of experience for myself. The thing that really got to me was that this might be the last time I'm seeing some of these friends. And that sounds horribly depressing, but that was the thought that I had in my mind. I worked for a company for 11 years, 12 years. Worked my way well up into the company at Cisco. Cisco Systems, not Cisco the food company. And when I was let go, I thought all these friends that I had made over a decade plus, I'd stay in touch with. I didn't hear from anybody after that. And I fear that if I don't stay in these conferences and I don't stay really involved in the community, that I'll lose some of that. And that's a choice that I have to make, how involved I am. But I started looking around and I go, I don't want to have that happen. I don't want this to be the last time that I see people. But it very well might be the last time I see them in person for a really long time. And that was an empty feeling. And I got so depressed about it that I had to find something to do. And that's why I went to that Empire Strips Back. I wanted something that took me completely out of every time I walked down a hallway, I saw another photographer and it would make me think about this stuff. And I took myself out and I, just started giving myself a little bit of a pep talk, right? Talking down the demons, if you will. And when I came out of the show and I met up with good people, my tribe, I realized that the physical location doesn't dictate the relationship. And this is another thing I learned from Josh. I don't think he understands the esteem in which I hold him, because he's able to maintain a marriage in two distinctly different places, Chicago and New York. And if I want to maintain my relationships with people, there's Zoom, right? I've got a car. I could buy a plane ticket anywhere in the world. I just felt, though, that as the conferences decline, as the retreats decline, as we lose these main touch points where we all come together as a group, as the tribe is separated by distance, unless there's that community that I was talking about an hour and 18 minutes ago, if there's not that community space, where do we go? What do we do? And it left me with more questions than answers. But I was writing a lot of the thoughts down, and I'm not going to read them to you because I really don't want to sound like I'm in a really bad spot, because I wasn't. But the feelings that I was having overall was loneliness, sadness, feeling like I don't fit in, a lot of stuff from being younger. I feel like, again, feelings, not reality. I feel like I squandered some opportunities years ago to work with some brands, or to at least lay the foundation with brands. And now the influencer culture has taken over so much that it's more and more difficult to approach brands. Not impossible, but just a little bit difficult to do it at a place like a trade show, right? I am not someone to ask companies for anything. I would rather just build a relationship, and if my name stays on their lips, great. But I am not one to go in there and say, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at all these numbers that I have. It's not what I do. So I also was feeling like I wasn't capitalizing on the show like I could have. And by that, I mean, I wasn't putting myself in those situations where I was talking to brands in a different way and showing my own value. And that was the fear and the resistance catching up with me. That was the shame and the self-doubt all coming to light all at once. And I say this to you not to make you feel bad for me or anything like that. It's the reality of it. It's the reality of what we go through when we see people that are far more successful than us. And if we have any line of competition in our bloodstream, it can either be a huge inspiration or it could be more difficult than that. And I found myself falling into old habits of yearning and wanting, and why do they have this and I don't? Why are they so good at this and I'm not? Why do they have so many friends and I don't? Right? And it just brought up a lot of questions that sound pretty terrible, but it's just, I think we all think these things. I think they all come up from time to time. I'm not saying you have to listen to those voices, and I'm not saying that I have the solution to it. But rather than back away from people, I dove in to my tribe. And I spent time, and I danced, and I laughed, and I stayed up way too late. And I probably had 1 or 2 drinks too many. Maybe. So I was able to extract myself from all of that. And I'm just watching the chat. Again, it's not coming up here, so I happen to see it on another screen. Timebridge Studio saying, sounds very relatable. Nikki saying, I miss you already. I miss you too, Nikki. And then Lindsay, thank you for being here, Lindsay. I appreciate it when you tune in. I really, really do. Perception, like feelings, may not always be true either. They're often not. And this is exactly it. That's the point. Thank you for distilling that down for me. I know the way that my brain works. When I treat my body poorly, this goes off the rails. And I was doing nothing but treating my body poorly. Not nearly enough water, not nearly enough nutrition, staying up too late, feeding my body alcohol, which I don't drink anymore. And I was in Vegas, so Vegas. So all of those things contribute to that negative mindset. And it just felt good to recognize that none of the people that matter to me give a shit about anything other than being a friend to me being a friend to them, having good conversation and laughs. And it has nothing to do with the work or the content or the business. It is how we're able to relate to each other and uplift each other and support each other and laugh and roast. But the people that matter most to me are the people that I talk to less and less and less about work. And that's how I knew I had found kind of the right people. So it's amazing the situations that I find myself. When I was out in the defense industry, I found myself in a very similar situation where I was surrounded by many men and several women that have changed the face of the planet, have changed the face of geopolitics through some of their actions. These are great heroes, great people. And I found myself in the company of them over and over and over. And they accepted me into their tribe in ways that I never expected. And it was wonderful. But there's always that feeling like, I just don't belong, you know? But I was able to be around some of the people that are the best at what they do. And I've done the same thing in this industry. I've found myself in the incredibly fortunate position of being friends with some of the best photographers in the world. And I'm just a dude in Podunk, Maine that happens to have a camera. that I use for video instead of taking pictures. And I really think that we have to step back and get out of our heads from time to time and realize that we're here far too short of a period to worry about the inconsequential shit. And the last night that I spent with my friends, and it was myself, Josh, Michelle Quigley, Erica was there for a bit, Katrina Rashawn, Tina Liu, Kelly Kendall, Joey T was there for a little bit. And I'm sure there's several people that I'm forgetting because it was just kind of like this one amorphous table. But it was the tribe. Jessica Malone was there, right? It was just the tribe. And I realized in that weird little island of misfit toys that we all belonged. We all belonged together. And it was at that moment that all that depression, all that stuff lifted, because I did finally feel like I fit somewhere. And it was overwhelming. It really was to have gone from feeling so low to feeling so content and happy and relaxed. And saying goodbye was a really hard thing. So, and I'm still getting emotional now, is like it's hard to say goodbye to people and don't know if you're going to see them in the same place, the same time that I've been seeing them every year, year in and year out for nearly the past decade. So I know that I'm still tired. I'm clearly sick, though I'm really digging how deep the voice is today. I got to tell you, I can't wait to listen to this back. I might even slow it down to like 0.75 and really drop it low. But I've got the funk. I've got whatever plague or crud or end of days disease. No, well, let's keep diseases out of it. But whatever crud is attacking my immune system at the moment, I brought it home with me. And I'm just going to give myself the weekend to relax, stay away. I imported all my video. I imported all my photos. And I'm not even going to really look at them, because I have no desire to get into that right now. I need to separate from the show for about 48 hours, really let everything settle. But I was saying over and over and over, I need to show up consistently here. I wasn't able to do that this morning like I wanted to, but hopefully I'm seeing enough of you on right now that I really appreciate you hanging out. That it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to talk about this when I can get a chance to talk about it. All right. Here we are at 128. I'm going to check the comments one last time, then I'm going to kind of wrap things up. In her image, hey. Watching from the airport, have safe travels home. All right. It was so amazing to see you and all your success and just be able to watch you get everything that you deserve. Very happy for you. Very proud of you. Oh, Josh is here. Oh, look at that. Love you, brother. If you want to know how seriously I took out hanging out time, I ordered kazoo today. I am going to let you tell that story someday. I'm not going to ruin that. I think the kazoo is a phenomenal idea. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. That is your idea. I want to see that come to fruition. If I can help you with that, I'll help you with that. And then loved watching your live podcast with Josh. Thank you so much. Traveling home with a full heart, Kelly Kendall says. And that, Kelly and I, oh, Jesus. So this is one of the best moments of my week anyway. So we're at the close party on the last night. And I just come out of a burlesque show, right? So I come out of the burlesque show and we're down there and the music's going and whatnot. And I've got a couple of cocktails in me. And I don't know, you start to just kind of like dance and you're shaking your shoulders a little bit. And then suddenly, I don't know how it happened, but like one of those dance circles formed around me. Now, I wasn't doing anything to promote said circle. It just kind of happened with whatever weird physical magnetic gravitation was going on. I found myself in the middle of the circle. So I immediately freaked the F out. And Kelly happened to be standing there and they were playing some song. And I don't even remember the song. I could probably watch the videos because they're starting to come out now. This is great. And So I start dancing, and I take Kelly. I love dancing. And I take Kelly, and I start swinging her around, and I've got my scarf, and it's going all over the place, and I drop my scarf, so I bend down to get it, and I start twerking. And I'm just having a great time amongst friends, right? Feeling just the weight of the world lift off my shoulders, having a great time. And I come up after picking the scarf up off the floor, and I look up, and there's a wall of people with their phones like this. And everybody's filming what's going on. And it was at that point that I lost my mind. And I was just like, I instantly said, well, it was a good career. It was good while it lasted. And then I said, you know what? Screw it. You're not having as much fun as I'm having. So watch that on your phone and remember the good times. But there is nothing in there that I'm ashamed of or unhappy about. If you got the video and you have a different angle, because I know there's like 50 different angles of it at this point, I'd love to see it. Josh sent me one that is absolutely going to be the next promo for Generator. He sent me a video of that, but there were so many other phones up, and it was this real weird sense of shame and embarrassment, then mixed with joy and I don't give an F attitude at all. And that's when I knew I was with the tribe that I was supposed to be with. Because when I can feel that safe amongst a group, I don't care what else goes on in the world. And so that made everything worthwhile. And then it all turned from that point. So Kelly, if you are watching, dancing with you changed the trajectory of my trip. And it was, unfortunately the night before I went home, but it was such a great way to end an amazing week. So my heart is full, my voice is gone, and the future's just filled with nothing but possibility. I hope if you were there, you had a great time. I'd love to hear your stories. If you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram, go over to the YouTube channel, just drop a comment. Let me know what happened at your WPPI. What was your high moment? Or who was the best speaker that you saw? Or what was the best? I saw robots wandering around. There was all sorts of stuff that was going on that I'm sure I missed because there's just too much to cover at one show. But again, Rio could be better. WPPI event staff put on a great show with the materials that they were given. Everybody there genuinely seemed to be having a good time if they weren't trying to connect to the Wi-Fi. And it was just a lot of fun. I'm afraid to pull up what I spent, because that went quickly, but it was all worth it, and I wouldn't ask for a dime back. It was an amazing experience. If you have the chance, go to a conference, go to a retreat, support the educators in your area, right? If they're doing a talk at a photo shop or they're doing a talk at a coffee shop, doesn't matter. Support your artist friends. This is what we do. And I think we can all support each other a little bit more. I'm so incredibly grateful for the support that I got at the show. And if there's any way that I can pay it back to any of you that were there, let me know how I can help you do that. That's the only way that we move this whole thing forward. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you again for tuning in. Thanks for the continued support. And I'll catch you next time. I will try to be back. I'm definitely going to be back next Wednesday night. I'm going to try to do another live show early next week. I'd like to start doing 3 lives a week if I can, and space them out equally, have a different approach to the lives. But I really want to start doing more and more and more of this. So if you have ideas, let me know. If you want to be on the podcast, all you have to do is apply. Go to generatorpodcast.com/apply. And if you're watching this and you feel like checking out all the WPPI goodies, go on over to generatorpodcast.com/WPPI. You can check out my book that's on pre-order. You can see all the freebies and the merch and the codes that companies gave me. Ecamm, who powers this entire broadcast, Ecamm gave a special deal for 15% off Ecamm subscriptions, which they never do. So they gave me that code. All you have to do is go to that page, generatorpodcast.com/WPPI, and see all the codes there. I'm not going to walk you through them. You're an adult. You know how to use the internet. All right, kids. I will talk to you next week. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you all. And I can't wait to see what you create. All right. Later.